Welcome to True and Unpolished, the podcast, a Cuss Culture production. Through this podcast, our intention is to uplift, inspire, and amuse.
I am Lydia Nicole.
Let's get authentic.
And I'm Nicole Wilson.
And this is True and Unpolished, the podcast. And today, welcome. Today, Nicole specifically was inspired to talk about the emotional vibrational scale. It is an Abraham Hicks tool. For those of you who don't know, it's Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks, and talks about this tool that you can use. And it's essentially about the recognition that we cannot jump from, a place of complete helplessness to joy. Like that's way too far to get to. And so Abraham Hicks talks about this scale, this way that we can incrementally reach up, so from hopelessness, I can reach up to anger because that's more empowering than that hopelessness, nothing I can do about it kind of thing. And then you can reach up from that, and there's anxiety. And Nicole actually wrote a really great blog post that's going to happen on Cuss Culture. Actually, no, by the time you are hearing this, everybody, it will have already been posted. So go back and see last Friday's blog post.
And there is a spot to download it, the scale as a PDF. I reference the scale more as a ladder,
yes.
Reaching up the ladder in my post. And there is an option to download the PDF if you wanted it for reference.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'll say this, that Nicole and I were actually just talking before we started talking to you about that there are so many of these scales out there. Like you could Google this and you will get all kinds of different vibrational scales. So it's rather easy to find one that resonates with you. And what I have found is that I did one last year, and it's the one, like it's my version. You know what I mean? It's what feels vibrationally right to me. And so it resonates with me. And Nicole's version resonates with her. So just like, just as we have our unique, authentic voice in what we express, so too with this tool, I think you have it. I think that there are fundamentally some things that are the same, although maybe not. Yeah. Nicole, do you think so?
I think so, yeah. I think the basis is the same. I think it's just kind of a play on words too, of what words, some people say God, some people say the universe, some people say higher power. It's just a word of what feels right to you.
Yeah, it's aliens.
Yes.
We should tell them about aliens one day.
Yeah.
I don't know if it fits here, but we will tell you about that. Bookmark it, everybody. We will talk about that one day. I think that what has been helpful to me is, all of these things, all of these teachers out there, including me, endeavor to give us tools that are really just pointers. And I love to say this, the Buddhist saying that says, the teaching itself is a finger pointing at the moon. If you watch the finger, you can't see the moon. So the tool itself is the finger pointing at the experience that we're trying to get to. And so if you pay too much attention to the tool, like if we got too into it and decided that we were really going to hash out like exactly what was right, wrong, what are the right words to put on the scale, then we're missing the whole point, because the whole point is about, where it brings us. So Nicole, tell me, when have you used the scale? Do you have for example of when you've used the scale recently?
I use the scale all the time, and I don't necessarily reference it all the time to use the words on the scale, but I know that when I am at a point where I'm not feeling good about myself,
yes,
I do take the time to stop and take a breath and just reach up from that feeling.
Yes. And I love that. And that's really the crux of it. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the scale, it essentially, it's got the ladders, the rungs on the ladders. And as I said, it's the recognition that we can't jump from one state of being, one feeling to this extreme opposite end. And obviously, we all want to feel joy, right? We all want to be happy. That's what we want. And Abraham says, okay, but if you are in a place of helplessness, if you are in a place of rage, how about don't reach for joy, because it ain't gonna happen and you're just gonna get stuck. And oftentimes we'll think, well, why am I not feeling better? Why am I not feeling better? I'm trying. I went and watched a movie that made me laugh. Why didn't that work? And it's because if there's too much of a discrepancy between where you are and where you want to be, then the only way it works is if you allow yourself to slowly go up the scale. And I can say that, again, it's just a tool. I think the same thing is true about surrender. I mean, surrender would be another way to put it. And it's just, I think we're at different points in our journeys, different tools work for us, and I'll tell you the way I used Abraham. So back when people listened to CDs, back when that happened, I would order these CDs of these. So Esther Hicks and her husband at the time, Jerry, who's now passed away, they would travel around and they'd go, to like the Holiday Inn banquet room in Tulsa. I just made that up. Anyway, Tulsa, and everybody, and they'd sell tickets. And so people in Tulsa would go, yay, Esther Hicks is coming, Abraham's coming. And they would all descend on this banquet room. And Abraham, you guys hear this? I'm trying really hard not to tell you what I don't want to tell you, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. So I always struggle with this. So essentially, Abraham is an entity, if you could call it an entity. Really, it's different. Okay, I'll just say it. The words that Esther uses is channel, is that she has found a place, and the story of how she found Abraham is really amazing. It involves her and meditation, and how she really liked it. Like, she got introduced to meditation. She had no interest in any kind of spiritual stuff. Really, her husband did. And it was kind of an accident. Like, she would begin to meditate, and what she was taught during meditation is that you release your thought. You bring your attention back to your breath. You don't allow yourself to follow the thought. So she kept going. And then later on, what became clear is what started to happen is she realized she was drawing pictures. No, she was writing letters with her nose in the air. So like moving her head around and writing letters with her nose. And she realized that like it was saying something, And so she calls it channeled. And so people descend on this banquet room and they all have questions. They say, Abraham, what about this situation? Like, what should I do here? And they do recordings of these events. And so I would literally like order the CDs of these events, of these people asking the questions. And I can tell you a couple of things. The first is that, like, don't get lost in the channel thing. When I found Abraham Hicks, and I won't go into my whole story of how it happened, but essentially the very first, after The Secret, the very first spiritual text I got was Ask and It Is Given, which is by Esther Hicks, Jerry and Esther Hicks. And the way that I got it was through Law of Attraction. I went to the bookstore and I said, okay, I'm going to walk in and pick the right and perfect book. And I just trusted. It was this kind of first instance of me really trusting my intuition and knowing that I was going to be guided exactly to the right book. And so I went and I picked this up, and I didn't realize it. I actually got the second, like there were two, because it was CDs. Again, CDs, guys. I was traveling a lot for work at that time. So
it's all on YouTube now.
Was that?
It's all on YouTube now.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. You don't have to get CDs, everybody. You don't even have to try to figure out how that would happen. So I bought this book on CD, and I didn't realize there was two volumes. There was volume 1 and volume 2. I didn't realize I got volume 2. So I didn't read the introduction. So I started the CDs in the middle of the book. And I'm like, I don't know who this Abraham dude is, but he is super smart, because everything he said, everything that was said through Abraham was like totally resonated with me and felt like the truth with a capital T. And so I get to the end and I realize, oh, there's another volume. In fact, it was before this. And then I go and I put it in, and that's where they describe that this is channeled. And my mouth dropped. I mean, if I had known it in the beginning, I don't think I would have picked it up, because I was so programmed with, fundamentalist kind of views around like evil and Satan and don't do it. And, I know that I wouldn't have done it. And so this channel thing, don't get lost in it. Honestly, I think that you could say that that's what I do on Sundays. You could say that. I don't say that. What I recognize is that I tap into the energy of my essence, and that energy is eternal and it's non-physical. And so it has a non-physical basis, non-body basis. So I am tapped into that energy, and at that place, we all meet. And so I am able to tap into the energy of my essence, which is also the energy of your essence. And so based on the people that are in the room and are listening and bring their consciousness there at the same time, I'm able to speak to us, you know what I mean? To the human part of us. And so you could say that it's channeled, although I don't. I won't. You do. But that's why it always resonates. In all of my talks on Sunday, I do not have it written out. I don't know what I'm going to say. I really don't. I have an idea. I have like a message, a point that I want to get across, and sometimes it works better than others. But it works because I am tapping into that presence and that energy, which is what I think Esther Hicks is doing. That's what I think she's doing.
And that's what Carrie actually introduced me to Abraham. And when I looked up Abraham Hicks, I was confused because there's this woman up there talking, and I was expecting a man named Abraham. And I'm like, I really like what this woman's saying, but I don't think I can find Abraham. And then that's when she explained to me the process behind it. And then I got it. And I do very much resonate with a lot of what he is saying.
Yeah, because it's truth with a capital T. That's the thing. It's your essence, my essence. So, and people will ask, who is Abraham? What is this? And it's very difficult to put it into words. And the explanation always grows each time, because what I can feel is true in my being is that it's the essence of all of us. Like, it is all of our consciousness together, non-physical. And Abraham says we, there's great love for you here. We, and so it's not an I, it's not an entity. Like, I started to call it an entity in the front end of this, and that's just not accurate. It is not an entity. I believe the words that I would use are, it is the essence energy of collective humanity, like collective conscious energy. And because we are all unique points in consciousness, I believe that we give those words, our own personality, our own, and so when we bring our own language to essence truths, they can sound different, even though it's the same message at its core. Now that I'm thinking about this, I think Abraham, everything's becoming, right? Everything's evolving. Everything's becoming. Abraham would say that 100%. And so there is, so I think when I listen, Abraham doesn't really have Esther's personality.
Yeah.
So I think if there's a difference between what Esther does and what I do, it's that I don't suspend Lydia when I tap into the energy of my essence and then begin to speak. I allow Lydia's voice to give it words.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So maybe that's the difference. Like, maybe that's like channel would be that you kind of suspend who you are.
Yourself,
right?
your personality. Yeah.
Right? And then,
so.
This is new. I've never gotten here before. That's what Abraham would say. We've never gotten here before. And it's true. I have found exactly what Abraham has found. That thing where Abraham will say the questions lead to new places, literally expand the wisdom that Abraham can give. And I can tell you that some of the best realizations that have come to me have come because of someone asking me a question in a spiritual counseling session or on a phone call with my girlfriends, asking me a question, and I take a breath and I tap into the energy of my essence and I go, oh my God, we never gotten here before. Like, this is new. This is a new understanding, a new realization, which is the most fun. So that's, that's what it is. And I totally have that experience. We've gotten away from the emotional scale, haven't we?
but it's all related.
So tell them where they can find this stuff. Tell them where they can find Abraham.
Well, Abraham is all over the internet. I
Yeah,
mean, you
like
just
just
Google it,
Google, right?
and yeah,
And I
Abraham
think
Hicks
there's
or
like
Esther Hicks.
Abraham-Hicks.com.
Yes,
I think so.
yep. I think that's what it is too. Yeah.
But really, YouTube is the best way. And I would
YouTube is
say,
so much.
suspend all of your that thought about channel. Like just throw it away. Like who cares? That's not it's a finger pointing at the moon. If you watch the finger, you can't see the moon. Like don't watch Abraham too closely. That's not the point. The point is the truth that is being delivered. So I would say go on, listen, and see if it resonates with you. See if it resonates with the truth of you. And I can say for me, it absolutely did. It was the truth that was written on my heart. I felt it. And the way that I used those CDs that I ordered, I wonder where those are. They're in a drawer somewhere. Surely I haven't thrown them away. But I used them. I played them over and over again. And every time I heard something different, and it helped to reprogram my subconscious. Like at the time when I found Abraham, I had so much negative self-talk that was silent. Like I couldn't hear it. It had been so ingrained in me. I had had such negative self-talk for so long that it took a while before I was even able to like hear it. It
Yep.
just it was like a stamp. It was, etched, like a brand. That's a better way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Slowly, I wanted to reprogram this subconscious programming that was there. So it's especially helpful when you don't yet know what your negative self-talk is. I mean, at least that was my experience of it.
It was my experience too. I was just at the point where I was realizing that I was victim for so long.
Yes.
I didn't realize that I was, a victim from a relationship with domestic abuse, and I had all these coping mechanisms that I didn't even realize had become a part of me, had become a learned part of my patterns.
Yes.
And through listening, to Abraham, brought a lot of that to light for me and made me realize that I was unconsciously in victim mentality.
Yes. And I love it because I love to talk about, the levels of consciousness, and because I think it's foundational. I think that it is like the thing that transforms everything. And Abraham says it in a very unique way. And so that understanding of victim consciousness, when you get, and one of the symptoms, by the way, that you're in victim consciousness is that you literally have the experience of being a victim. So if you look around your life and there's villains and you are the victim, like you're in victim consciousness. It's not a judgment about you. It doesn't say anything about you. It's that at some point you stopped, you started only looking at the proof around you to tell you where you were and what was true about you. And so, and if, by the way, if you're a villain, you're probably in victim consciousness too. Although you could be in victor, but usually villain, or usually victim. So, and what Nicole is saying is that it is so helpful to understand that when you can understand without judgment in any moment, when I'm in victim consciousness, when I can be aware of that, that is absolutely key to my getting out, to my finding my freedom, to my finding happiness and joy again. Like the first step is, oh, I'm in victim. And
Is the
where
awareness.
I was a victim for a really, really, really long time. And incidentally, anytime I had a glass of wine, I would tell everybody about how victimized I was. I would tell everybody the story. I needed everybody to know the story of how Lydia was a victim. And interestingly, through this work, what began to happen is I began to just be quiet. Like it will take you a very long time to find out, if you ever would find out specifics that I would give to somebody that I had met 5 minutes ago because I was having a glass of wine, and if we're drinking to excess too, I mean, you're in victim, like you're usually down there in a lower energetic, lower rung ladder, typically, You know, I know some people that are happy drunks. But
I want to ask too, in relation to the consciousness scale and the emotional scale, is it possible to go from victim to, can you go up more than one rung with that, or is it the process,
so
like on the
okay,
emotional scale?
so here's my experience of that. It depends on my ability to notice that I'm in victim consciousness. So let me take a breath with that. This is a great question, Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would say is this. When you have practiced the emotional scale for a long time, even if you haven't called it the emotional scale, when you have practiced recognizing, oh, I'm in victim, taking a breath, and when you practice the level of consciousness that is vessel consciousness for a long enough sustained period of time, everybody, vessel consciousness is the recognition that my personality, so Lydia is my personality, but it is not my true identity, that I am a part of something larger, and Lydia is being used by that something larger to be of service. Like, that's vessel consciousness. When you have experienced that state of being for long enough, when it becomes your default state, in my experience, you don't need the emotional scale. It can happen in a breath of surrender, because I have, just like, and Nicole, we've talked about this, right? Mm-hmm. So Nicole, before we started this, we always take a breath and we say it's our intention to be truly helpful. We tap into the energy of our essence, and we've done that for so long now that we really don't have to say anything. Like, just the breath, we have practiced it long enough that we have trained our minds to step aside and our consciousness to come up. And so it's a retraining. So I would say that the emotional scale is about the training. It's about, and there are moments in life where, let's say I've had something happen. Let's say somebody dies, somebody close to me dies. And so I go down to helplessness because I am completely sad and depressed. And I am there for a week, even though I've practiced, really for years to stay in vessel consciousness. Well, I should say this. I always have moments where I go down to victim, but when that's the exception and not the rule, even if I have a period of, sadness, loss, where I'm hopeless, helpless, that can build on each other. Like, those attract more thoughts like it, more feelings like it. So we can get into a rut again where what we need is to reach up incrementally. So you'll know, like, within yourself when you can do it. So I would say, again, it's a tool. And I think it's also situation by situation.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
So in this particular relationship, I need the emotional scale for that one. In this one, not so much. Oh gosh, I thought it would be funny if I talked about this. Guess what happened before this, y'all?
What?
I was very sad. I've been sad all morning. And the reason why is because I woke up first thing and there was a text on my phone, and it was from my neighbor. And she said, I wanted to tell you that we're moving before you find out from the kids. Now, what I need to tell you is, since we moved here, it'll be 4 years ago, January 1st, we right away met these neighbors. And my kids and their kids have been like inseparable, peas and carrots. Like, they're always at my house. I give them popsicle. Like, we have been such a part of each other's lives. And literally, they're like a few houses down, so the kids can run back and forth. And they're moving. And I told Keith, and Keith and I both teared up. Like, it's sad. We are very, very sad. Like, and they're only moving 5 minutes away, everybody. Like, literally 5 minutes away. And I drove by there. I told him it was for him because he was sad, but I wanted to see. And so it's a 5-minute drive. It's an 8-minute bike ride. They're not yet ready for a bike ride because there's a kind of a busier road, but we'll get there. But so that was the first thing. So I drive him by this house. Oh my gosh, y'all, if my neighbor ever listens to this, Nikki, I love you. We'll talk about it later. So I drive him there, and we turn down the road, and I realize this is the road that one of Kai's good friends lives down. And their friends with the neighbors. And Connor's good friend lives on the next road. And so I'm driving down and I start to feel jealous that these kids are going to get to play together without my kids being able to play. Like there was this part of me that wanted them to move to a road that they would not have friends on and be sad as I'm going to be. And that's kind of, I mean, it's like, am I kidding me? Yes, but it was true. I was like, I felt myself feeling jealous. Like it was like, oh no, we're going to be alone and they get to go and have other friends. Anyway, yes. So all of this to say, and this was about, yes, my 8 and 9-year-olds friends, everybody. So we can practice this stuff for a really long time and then get into a new situation that brings up kind of old wounds and old hurts. And now that I'm thinking about it, that was true. So I grew up next to a house that was a rental. So it was constantly cycling through people. Like I was a constant, but they were cycling through. And see, our neighbors, it's a rental. They've been renting this house and we own. So now they're leaving. So this is like my childhood wound happening again, where the friend is going, oh, wow. Okay. Well, time to call the therapist again, everybody, right?
Well, now you can work through it.
Right. So this is a moment where the vibrational scale will help. And I can say that I think, jealousy is a reach up maybe from, where is that? I think it's a reach up from helpless, like my sad, depressed state. But if I get stuck in jealousy, I got a problem. It's reaching up incrementally. So I would reach up from jealousy to, disappointed. Right? So just a little feeling of disappointment. And then I would reach up to disappointed to kind of just feeling neutral about it. And then I could be hopeful, like, oh, well, maybe there'll be somebody else that moves into that house that we'll have a really good time with. And then from hopeful, I could go, hey, it would be really great is if we do a bike ride and ride around and see where other kids around the neighborhood we've never met before. So see, now I'm getting excited. So it's this incremental reach to get me back to, happy. So that's we just did it with my with the situation with my neighbors. Yeah.
That was a great example.
Yeah, it was a good example. Apparently, I'm just glad that I could experience negative emotions so that we could then talk about it later.
There you go. Perfect.
Well, I think that I'm set with what I want to say about it. How about you, Nicole?
Yeah, I think that was great. I think that was a great example at the end there. It doesn't have to be this devastating emotion that you reach up from. It's just, when you first heard it, I'm sure you felt that devastation, but it's not.
I totally did. I was totally devastated. 5 minutes. It's a mile. It's 1.4 miles. I know because, as I said, I drove there.
You Google mapped it.
I asked her for the address. Anyway, yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And what's interesting is that I don't have usually these kind of emotions for myself, like with other people. So it's like I needed my children as the buffer to experience the emotion, Ooh.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother show, everybody. A whole nother show.
Absolutely. I'll write that one down.
That's right. Well, you guys check out the blog post. It will have been posted last week on Cusp Culture, Nicole's blog post that's going to have her interpretation of the vibrational scale, the emotional scale, and a PDF version that you can download. I am so grateful. We are so grateful for all of you who are listening. This is such a fun journey for us. And it is really exciting to know that even one person would get from this time what Nicole and I are getting from this time from doing it. So thank you so much.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you so much for listening because it has been a crazy journey. And I also want to mention too that on our website where you can find all of the platforms to listen to this podcast, we do have a comment section now. We are interested in hearing if there is anything that you think you want to hear us, give our points of view on. Please leave that in the comments and we'll take that into consideration for future episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say that only positive comments. I'm teasing. I'm totally teasing.
Yeah.
We welcome all comments. But please, be as kind as you can. It's okay to disagree kindly. And we welcome it, like Nicole said. So we are grateful. Thank you, everybody. This is
Thank
Lydia
you.
Singleton.
And this is Nicole Wilson.
And you have been listening to True and Unpolished, the podcast. Let's see what happens next.